Right. There's not going to be a normal video this week. Instead, I'm doing one of these little rambling at the camera things because I didn't really have enough time to get any substantial work done this week. I spent the first half of the week, like, super sick, and then the next half of the week I spent hanging out with friends and family around Thanksgiving time, so, you know, they're all probably going to get sick too. So what I did manage to do was I started work on what might have been a little jam game. I had initially wanted to submit something to the recent GMC jam, but I don't think I'll really have time to finish anything substantial. But I did get a little bit of work done, and it made me think of some interesting things that I wanted to talk about. Ordinarily, when I'm starting a new project, I start sort of from lower level systems and I add upper level stuff as kind of an afterthought. So, you know, I'll start by making a character and making him animated and making some assets for him and making him run around and control good. And I think if, like me, you were sort of raised on, like, YouTube tutorials and that sort of thing, that is generally the way you're taught to do things, because usually they jump you into that, like, basic stuff first, before you learn things like menus and dialogue trees. This time, what I wanted to do was I kind of wanted to start outward and then define overarching gameplay loops and then work my way inward into, like, the meat of the moment-to-moment gameplay. And so what I started with was making a kind of UI system, and I learned a lot while I was working on it. So one thing that I usually do when I'm making a UI system is I'll define 3 types of objects. They'll be interfaces, menus, and buttons. An interface contains a list of menus, and a menu contains a list of buttons. And different menus and interfaces and buttons can be active or inactive, they can be visible or invisible, they can have all these different properties. And what happens is if you call a function on a interface, it loops through all of its menus and it calls that same function inside of them, and then the menus loop through all their buttons and they call the same function inside of their buttons. So that's a way I can check easily for whether or not I'm clicking a button in a game or not, is I just ask the interface, and then the interface checks all of its menus, and the menus check all of the buttons, and then everything returns back up to the top, and then the interface spits out the ID of whatever button I'm clicking on. So something I eventually realized was, because all of these things contain the same... Oop, bump the mic. Because all of these things contain the same functions, like the same basic interface, I don't really need these to be so separate. And if I really start to think of them as, like, being fundamentally the same thing, that opens up a lot of opportunities and a lot of possibilities. So what I did this time around was I defined something called element. Rev, in this case, is just the theme of the jam, which is revolution. So rev element just contains this little, essentially like a JavaScript, interface, or was that Java? I don't remember, I don't care. Anyway, so it's an empty function that is called update and an empty function that is called draw. There would probably need to be some more functions as well, like onClick or whatever. And everything, like windows within the game, buttons within the game, log files, anything, they all inherit from this element, and they just override any function that they need some sort of unique behavior for. Windows are a unique element because what they do is they actually contain their own list of elements. So somewhere at the top of this tree, there's a window, and the branches would be more windows, and then the leaves of this tree would be like the buttons and stuff. And if I call, you know, update on a window, it goes through all of its elements and it calls their update. And if that's a window, then that window will go through all of its elements and call update. The same deal with draw. And the way the drawing works is interesting because each window will create a unique surface, and then it will draw its contents to that surface before finally resetting the target and drawing itself. This made me notice, well, one interesting side effect of this is anything being drawn inside of a window is being drawn relative to that window instead of relative to the screen. So that's kind of nice, because it means if I move a window, everything inside of it will automatically move with it. The one difficulty will be if I want to check if I'm clicking on something and, you know, it's within several layers of windows, I'll need each window to actually offset the position being checked to be relative to it instead of whatever the previous scope was, so that I can actually get like a... Shut up! So I can actually get like a correct value there. One thing that I noticed about surfaces is very, very cool, which is when you call surface reset target, it doesn't actually reset to the application surface, which is what I thought. It resets to the previous surface that you set. So you can look at surface set target and surface reset target as being like an open and closed brackets, where each time you call this, you're defining an even like deeper... you can look at it as like a scope if you want that you're drawing things in. So, you know, if I'm calling this a bajillion times for each window, it's being drawn deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the windows. And then finally, when I exit these loops, it's being reset back out to the previous window until it's reset back to the application surface. This made me notice an actual problem with the manual. Wow. Can I type? I actually can't. I've been hut and pecking this entire time. Was it this one? This function resets all further drawing from the target surface back to the screen. It doesn't even say to the application surface, which to be fair would also be wrong. But this is not at all what surface reset target does. Somewhere else in the manual, it actually defines it correctly. Was it this? Yeah, instead you must reset the target for each of the surfaces that you set, much like you must use opening and closing brackets for code blocks. So the above should be written either like this or like this. This would sort of be an example of what I was talking about, where you set the target to surface 1, you draw something to that, you set the target to surface 2, you draw something to that, and then you reset to surface 1, and then you reset to the application surface. It's very funny to me that this is still like this. I don't think I have the latest version of the manual, though, so this might have actually changed. I don't know. I'll have to check. Maybe I'll submit a ticket. So yeah, this stuff is cool, and I feel like working on this... Oh, I guess I should actually show it working. So here's a window, and it contains this little log file, which currently just has lorem ipsum stuff written to it. If I go up to... This is all being defined inside of this ship constructor, which there would probably be like multiple ships in the game, and you could change which one you are on, and that would change the interface accordingly. If I uncomment this... Now you can see another window is being drawn inside of this one, and this one says skibbity riz. What this is doing is it's just making a new log file, a new window that's half as large as this one. It's adding the log file to the window as an element. It is writing skibbity riz to the log file, and then it's adding the window we just created to the previous window we created as an element. And as you'll see, if I don't do that, it actually doesn't draw at all, because it's just floating in the vacuum of space. It's not actually defined in any meaningful scope. It's just in the ship, and the ship only draws this log window. So yeah, I have to make another window responsible for it. I can... What if I do this? I've done this before, I don't know if it's still working properly. Yeah, it is. Currently, it actually limits the number of lines that it'll draw. I could even... I actually don't know what this would look like, because I don't know which element's being drawn first. Yeah, so now you can more plainly see sort of what's going on here with the surfaces. So this is very cool, and if I created code that let me drag around this upper window, all the stuff inside of it would be cleanly dragged along with it. I could make it so that I could resize the windows, and all of that would be really, 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 really easy to implement, because I have more or less implemented this system, like, semi-competently, which makes me happy. So, if I did decide to continue this, I could probably get a working prototype of a game relatively quickly. My computer's pooping itself. Are we good? I might have to kill something. I don't think having this browser and Gamemaker and OBS open is good. But yeah, it would be relatively easy to prototype a game with this. So I guess a good lesson too is if you take the time to program upper level systems first, it makes game development a lot faster. So yeah, this is making me very happy, and I do actually sort of want to continue with this because a system like this would be really, really useful for basically everything else I create. So yeah, I don't know, just upper level systems. They're not really anything I ever mucked around with before. I kind of always hated them. I hated making menus and interfaces and buttons and stuff. But now that I've been doing it more and more lately, and I've been focusing more on it, I'm realizing that it's actually... it might even be more fun than making the lower level systems, as weird as that sounds, because I do love making characters that run around and shoot. But yeah, I guess that is all I have to say about that. I actually have basically shown you all of the code for this entire project. Do steal it if it looks even vaguely useful to you. I don't care. I think it's pretty sweet. And yeah, thanks for watching.
我只有告诉人家我身上东西，我一定要拿回来。